Many Canadians are welcoming this week's news of a 2-month GST holiday, but some provinces say they're caught off guard and the measure could cost them millions of dollars. That's because 5 provinces have a harmonized sales tax, a combination of provincial and federal taxes. And under this plan, the entire HST would be removed. Today, reporters asked the Prime Minister whether he'd compensate those affected provinces.
I think every provincial government across the country understands how important it is to be there for Canadians who are facing real pressures around the cost of living. That's what we're doing. That's why we're stepping up to support Canadians, and I'm expecting provinces who see the challenges that their citizens are facing to realize that this is a way they can be there for people as they face the challenges of the next few months.
Here to respond is Susan Holt, the Premier of New Brunswick. Thanks for coming on, Premier.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So were you given any advance notice of this GST, HST cut? Did the Liberal government consult you on these changes, or was it what it seems to be a unilateral maneuver that could end up costing you millions?
I talked to the federal government the day before that I think it came out publicly, so a little bit of advance notice.
So the Prime Minister today was asked about this problem that some provinces may be shouldered with the cost of actually putting this tax cut through for these 2 months that he's got planned. And he said basically that he expects the provinces to step up, to fill in the gaps, to have to be shouldering some of the costs that come with this GST, HST cut. What do you say to the Prime Minister? Are you prepared to spend what could be millions of dollars to make sure that his dream comes into fruition in New Brunswick?
Well, we're looking at all of that right now. As we said, JP, we learned about this on Wednesday, starting to get some more details yesterday and today. And so we're assessing what it's going to cost New Brunswick in terms of revenues, what benefits New Brunswickers are going to see from this, what positive impacts it'll have on the economy in terms of stimulating some growth and some net new sales maybe for New Brunswick businesses and local businesses in the holiday period, and trying to figure out where it's going to shake out. New Brunswickers have told us pretty consistently that they don't want to pay more tax, that they're struggling with the cost of living. And so I certainly don't love the idea of being the person standing between them and a tax cut. So we're looking at how we're going to make it work.
So when you spoke to the federal officials the day before this came out, did they tell you that New Brunswick would have to pay for a portion of this? Were they clear that you would have to be on the hook for some of this?
The conversations that I were in were pretty high level, and members of my team were getting more of the technical information about what was included and how it was going to work. And so I think on day one, it was really just understanding the notion of it. And then it was yesterday that we started to learn more of the details about how it was going to roll out and how it would impact New Brunswick.
As you look at those details, do you think this is a good thing? Do you think it's a good idea? As you say, you don't want to get in between New Brunswickers and a tax cut. Do you think that this is a prudent use of money, exempting some products from the HST for 2 months? Do you think that that's a good thing to do?
Well, it actually aligns with some of the things that we've been doing ourselves, because we heard not only through the election, but the many months, years before, that New Brunswickers were struggling with the rising cost of living. And so we committed to taking the tax or the equivalent of the tax off of their power bills, of taking tax off development, of putting a better school food program in place, putting a rent cap in place, lots of measures to try and make life more affordable for New Brunswickers. So to have the federal government come and say that they want to take the tax off of things like prepared food, which, look, I'm a mom of 3 kids. I know what it's like when you don't have time or to go home and make something from scratch, and you just have to go and grab something prepared from the grocery store if you can. So I think there's a lot of people who could benefit from saving 15% off of purchases at a time of year when the bills are piling up and your credit card's piling up, and it's a great time to have a bit of relief.
Do you have any concerns about what some goods are included in this? We've heard some criticisms that there's some luxury goods that might fall into these categories, like pricey video game consoles. And then there's also some products that some people say shouldn't be encouraged to buy. You know, people shouldn't be encouraged to get cheaper liquor, cheaper wine, cheaper beer. Do you have any of those concerns about A, the luxury goods that are included, and B, some of those products that might not be so good for you?
Yeah, we have had that conversation here, particularly around the beer and wine piece, because it's something like New Brunswick's actually known as a real hub of craft beer. We have phenomenal local brewers, and I'm sure that they're excited by this opportunity. But we also look are conscious. The number one thing we're tackling here in New Brunswick is healthcare, and so we want to make sure that government programs and incentives are encouraging the kind of behaviors that drive a healthy society, and we know that alcohol needs to be consumed in moderation. So we did look at that one and wonder, but we also know it's the holidays. This is a time when people like to get together and celebrate, and so we want to continue to make sure that we're doing that responsibly and encouraging people to be responsible. So it's a balance to thread.
Yeah, and chips and candy and some other goods too that the kids might like, but not necessarily the best
Look,
for you.
and New Brunswick has some world-renowned candy makers, right? We are home to Ganongs, which is one of the oldest chocolatiers that you'll find, and so
Yeah,
there's some great successes in our province that would benefit from some.
that's a good plug. I love Ganong. Who can go wrong with that? Some experts that we've been speaking to here, including economist Trevor Tombe, says that there actually might be some language in the HST agreements that Ottawa has signed with some of the various provinces that does not allow them to do this unilaterally. That there might be some protections for provinces who are saying, hey, we don't necessarily want to come up with a few $1 million here that you're asking us to. What are your lawyers telling you about that angle? Are there any protections for New Brunswick?
Yeah, we're learning a little bit about that. I don't know what the long name of it is, an integrated something agreement that's related to tax and the harmonized tax. So we are looking at all of the pieces of this now that we're 2 days into understanding it better so that we have all the information we need to know what are the benefits to New Brunswickers, what's the benefit to our economy, what's the cost to our budget, and what are all of our mechanisms to try to come out with the most win-win situation that we can for the people of New Brunswick and for our government's bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, because you just, I think, you're presenting a budget and the deficit is about $92 million as it stands now. Are you concerned that this measure could actually make your fiscal situation a little bit worse? Because we are talking about several $1 million over the next couple months.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's our job to make sure that we're living within our means. And we'd made some decisions about costs that we were prepared to incur in order to pass that relief on to New Brunswickers. I mentioned 10% off of people's power is a big one, and we've forecast for what that's going to cost us, and think that that's the right thing to do for New Brunswickers. So we're looking at this to understand what will be the impact to our bottom line, what might be the bump to our economic activity, and we're looking at a lot of things with the books. Honestly, the books in New Brunswick over the last 6 years, forecasts and projections have not necessarily been met consistently. So we're looking at that second quarter projected deficit and looking at all sorts of different ways that we can meet our commitment to New Brunswickers to balance the budget and to deliver investments into the things that they care about and want to see prioritized, but doing so in a fiscally responsible way. So it's the beauty of politics, right? You've got to strike that balance. You got to help people. We've got to do it within our means.
Yeah, I just want to ask you about the federal books, because speaking of balanced books, I mean, this measure, this GST rebate or this cut or however you want to call it, plus the $250 checks that are going out are going to cost about $6.5 billion. And we know that the federal budget is already pretty deep in the hole. They're expected to post well over a $40 billion deficit this year. The national debt is up to $1.4 trillion. That costs about $54 billion a year to service. Do you have any concerns about the fiscal capacity of the federal government? Are you concerned about our credit rating? Are you concerned about just all this spending up in Ottawa?
Yeah, I mean, this all sounds familiar because it's something that New Brunswick has gone through over the past, well, it was quite a few years ago where we were working hard to get out of a structural deficit and try to find our way to balance, but needing to invest in the things that New Brunswickers deserve, which is basic things like healthcare and a strong education system. But we focused our campaign, and I think one of the reasons we got elected is because we were proposing balance to New Brunswickers, live within our means and invest really carefully in the things that matter to them. And so we do want to see the same from the federal government, right? We want to see The people who are looking at their credit card bills today and trying to figure out, after December, how do I pay this in January? We want to make sure that our federal government has a path to reducing our national debt and to living within the means of our country.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much to the New Brunswick Premier, Susan Holt. Appreciate you coming on, Premier. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, JP. Appreciate it.